Mic check 1 2 1 2. Welcome to another episode of I So Bloom, a place where growth gets real, healing isn't linear, and emotional intelligence takes center stage. They say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I got my squad with me. Brother Chris Classic.
What up?
Mr. Jamel Shelton.
What's up?
And Dr. Curtis Jasper.
What's good, y'all?
The whole purpose is to let everybody out there know that no matter the storm you're going to, there's always room to grow. Aight, so Bloom. We got our esteemed special guest today, Mr. Carlton Mackey. Give it up for him one time.
Hey, yes, sir.
Brother.
Glad you're here, bro.
Good
Yep.
to be here.
Now, for those who don't know, Mr. Carlton Mackey has a huge footprint. He not only is the assistant director of community engagement at the High Museum, which is the premier museum out here in Atlanta.
I'll say the Southeast.
The Southeast, word. As well as the founder of Black Men Smile.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I would say it shifted the narrative. Mm-hmm. So I don't know the word to say, but you're kind of like a cultural icon, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll receive it.
I'm gonna throw you that one up.
Your mouth to God's
There you go. There you go. And today's conversation is gonna be on authenticity.
Ooh.
So I can't think of a better brother that has led the way in reframing narratives to lead the conversation in authenticity. So I'm curious, what does authenticity mean to y'all brothers? I got my black folder here. I don't want to have to go to it.
Okay.
The stat pack?
The stat pack, my statistics.
Yeah. The statistics?
My statistics.
Stats, huh?
So what's authenticity mean to you, Chris?
So the first thing that I think about is a certificate of authenticity, right? And that is some sort of guarantee that what you have is real, right? And so I think authenticity when it comes to humans is your realist self, the truth of you, who you are naked, whether that's physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of that. So I think it's easy to identify someone's authenticity because it's a palpable thing, right? It's almost like an odor, right? You know, in the fragrance space, you're supposed to believe that your fragrances speak for you when you enter a room, right? And so sometimes your authenticity can show up. If you see someone posturing and they have all the things, right? It's just like, nigga lying.
Like that's the costume of the person that you actually admire that is authentic.
It's cosplay. You know what I'm saying? So
it's like an odor. That was
So I think authenticity is going to be something that is different for each person and each of us, and that's okay. But operating in your authentic self is, pretty amazing.
I think it's. I'm not going to give a elaborate definition like Brother Chris.
Sorry.
I think it was,
yo, where's your metaphor game at, yo?
I think it's being true to who you are when no one else is watching, right? Really, quite simply, just being true to who you are. And I think that if you don't allow yourself the time to spend with yourself, a lot of people are out here walking around thinking they're being authentic, and they're really getting these thoughts and these ideas from other people, whether it's their parents, whether it's their community, and they really don't know what it is to be authentic for themselves. For me, it took me a while, right? I think I was trying to remove being my most authentic self. As an older man now, I'm sensitive, right? And I've been sensitive all my life. But early
You're a brother with feelings.
I'm a brother with feelings. But early on, I didn't acknowledge that because of the environment of which I grew up in, right? Now, as a man, and I realize that it's strength behind that, being in part of the groups like this and in Ndugu, I give myself permission to be my most authentic self.
Which is something I hear you speak on a lot, and that's powerful. You heard that?
I ain't gonna go deep in it.
Is that what shallow looks like for Jamel Shelton?
With the scuba diving gear
right
on.
there. And then,
How would you define it?
For me, authenticity is within, right? Being who you are within where we are, right? Because it's easy to say being who you are, right? But there's some conformity that all of us must make. And your life is designed to sort of smash out any forms of authenticity for you so that you can conform. Capitalism, sexism, racism, right? And so you have more reasons not to be authentic, right? That will become, even as parents, right?
Yeah.
We sort of force our children to conform, right? And so there's a lot of reasons that just living, being in existence, that will challenge your authenticity. And so personally speaking, it's me being able to stay and go within, be within who I am within the matrix or wherever I currently am.
Almost like those things that challenge your authenticity is what pulls you into a human doing versus be a human being.
Under the assumption that you even have that level of awareness, right? Most people have born into, somebody has really smothered out their authenticity.
Yeah.
And they grow up people pleasing and making adjustments their entire life.
As the disruptor that you are, you know, please, how would you define authenticity, sir?
I think that expressing one's authentic self is a radical act because of a phrase that I heard someone say before, that one of the hardest things in the world we could be is ourselves. And I think that before one's authentic self can be expressed, though, one has to do a true identity assessment.
For sure.
I think when I think about this question of authenticity, I don't disconnect it from exploring questions around identity. And from some of my work that I've done with students in the past, I think about the years that I've really watched at critical ages with high school students and with college students, them really trying to find out who they are and trying to find out how they want to show up. And it makes me, over time I've developed a workshop that really is tied to authenticity, because it allows authenticity to be expressed only after one really finds out who they are. Because you can't be authentically you if you don't even know who you are. And you can't really know who you are until you begin to interrogate, how do you know?
Absolutely. That's good. Bro.
So the question that I ask in this workshop is, well, it's titled, "Who are you? ... and how do you know?" And it's how do you know who you are that we have to unpack. And I make an argument that asking a person who they are is really a three-part question. And it's really, who are you? It's a workshop that I do where I give opportunity for them to ask really three questions. It's who are you? Or who am I? Is how it's phrased. Who am I? Who are they? Which is anyone outside of you. And who do they say that I am?
That's good. That's real.
And until you really unpack your answers to each of those categories, you really don't have a sense of who you are. So who am I? I start with it's a blank document, and it just says, I am, and a blank. And it's 10 blanks. And I don't let you see what it is. I say, turn it over, and I'm going to give you 40 seconds, 30 seconds to try to fill out all 10 of these. And so I say, go. And so people just start writing, I am, and they fill it in.
Which they probably fill accomplishments, they fill in the roles and titles that they hold.
A number of things, I would suspect.
A number of things. And one of the things, to give away, I won't even go down all of them right this second, but one of the things that I found
Give away the secret
is
sauce.
that almost always within the first 3 blanks, people write, I am, an identity that they have had to fight and struggle in the world to feel affirmed. Or the flip side is an identity that has experienced oppression. where they've had to fight through for that identity to be seen as worthy of existing.
Sure.
So every black person writes they're black within the first 3 lines. I've never not seen it.
I can see that.
Every person who identifies as gay, LGBTQIA+, every one of them within the first 3 lines writes gay or whatever that identifier is.
But not a Caucasian.
Almost never within the first
Yo, I am
5,
white
and
would-
almost
Interesting.
never by the time the whole
That
sheet is
would
done.
raise so many eyebrows. They would be the days at that point.
It doesn't show. Certain things don't show up for certain people.
Right.
But again, it's that identity and its existence hasn't been forged out of struggle.
For sure.
Right.
Almost every woman writes woman. Now, every mother almost always writes mother.
For sure.
And what this first quick assessment does is it allows you to really think through, how are you showing up in the world? And what are the things that are important to you about who you are? There's not a Jewish person that is not written Jewish. I haven't had a lot of encounters with in doing these workshops, but in every time I have had a person who was Palestinian, first or second.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Now think about it. How could it not? Your whole life with some of these identities, you are working to fight for that identity's place. You are working to correct narratives around what people think about that. You are working to establish a sense of pride and credibility in who that is. When that is not the framing, the ground from which that identity emerged, you almost don't even feel like it's something you have to put.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Understood.
Yeah.
That's big.
Where did you come? I mean, for you to create a workshop based off this subject, it tells me that you have a lot of passion. You've been thinking a lot about that. If you could take us back to maybe childhood, how was your relationship with being authentic inside of your home? Did you have did you grow up inside of a home where they created fertile soil for you to be your most authentic self, or did this come from maybe a struggle, and through the struggle you said, I need to be more authentic, and here goes the workshop?
Powerful question. And anytime I think back to my beginnings, I think anytime anyone thinks back to their beginnings, it's pause worthy. And it's with humility and reflection that as an older adult, I'm still working to unpack and understand critical moments in my life that shaped me into who I am, that I may have never known were critical moments in my life that shaped me into who I am.
That's good, bro. That's real good.
And it's like the most common response I got to creating Black Men Smile, when I used to ask brothers, what makes you smile? The most common response I got was, no one's ever asked me that. And I'm only using that as a reference to say, this is a powerful question that no one has ever asked. And in thinking of,
brain with Jamel.
and in thinking about it, it gives me an opportunity to advance who I am and how I understand myself, because this platform is giving people an opportunity to tap into their bags and see what's inside of it. You know, we carry them, but sometimes we don't stop to unzip them and pull out the things that are in them. I think that, I'll respond by saying, I was raised and nurtured in love. I know and have always known, which is, I think, the biggest confidence builder and the most fertile ground a person can come out of is at an early stage knowing that they're cared about.
Yeah, man.
I was raised by people who loved themselves some me. And I know that. I know that now more than ever. And I think that that gave me the confidence to be who I am. While at the same time, I've always, in knowing that I was loved, I've always struggled to understand who I was, because the love that I had from a grandmother who raised me came out of a deep knowing that I was not raised by my mother, who had passed away. So I've always had this deep sense of longing to reconnect, to identify with what was normal for everybody else. Everybody would, step on the line, break your mama's spine, step on the crack. I always, that just sounded like a little rhyme. Every time I heard it, it sounded different to me, because where was my mom? It's the most innocent, simple little thing, but every time I looked at a crack, I was like, it was a reminder that this thing that everyone took as just base, default, standard, normative as an identity.
It created questions for you.
It created questions for me. So as much as I knew that I was loved, my identity was forged out of I had deep inquiry at a very early age, because at the age of 4, when my mom passed, what does a 4-year-old kid who do other than ask questions, big questions about life,
For sure.
when the person that they probably connect to more than any other human is no longer there? I think my deep intellect is a consequence of my deep inquiry, which began at an early stage simply because I was forced to ask some of life's biggest questions. I had to ask questions, existential questions. At 4, because I had already been faced with the dilemma, the paradox of life, which is the consequence of living is death. I already knew that lesson.
I definitely feel like authentically you're unique in that, to your point about your deep intellect coming from those deep questions, some people still would not have responded like that. I know many of brothers who unfortunately don't have their fathers or mothers, and they never sought to ask those deep, they just accepted what was there in front of them. So I don't want you to do yourself a small disservice by assuming that standard. You know what I mean? That is authentic and unique to you. And, we talk often about feelings versus fact, and how your journey and the story you tell yourself about yourself creates a narrative, your identity narrative. And a lot of times we marry the feeling and attach it to the narrative, and not the fact that attaches it to the narrative. I think your narrative was predicated on that fact. And that's a big building block, and I think it's very easy to see why you have become the icon that I'm calling that you are. And it's based on, and in your identity narrative is based on that building block. That's really powerful. That caught me off guard.
And also, I would say to give a lot of love to the home of which you've grown into, right?
Yep.
Because depending on the environment, those questions could have been shunned. Oh, don't worry about that, right? It sounds like
like it is what it is kind of scenario.
You grew up in an environment where those questions were accepted. You were allowed to be your most authentic self and ask those questions. Now, regardless if you got the answer that you were looking for, whether or not, you were allowed to really explore your internal thoughts to at least ask those questions. So heavy props to those of which raised you.
Oh, yeah. And they, I think about the way that they went about answering those questions was turning to their faith, which I'm rooted in spiritual practice. I am, the role of the Spirit is fundamental to my understanding of myself. But it was also nurtured because these are questions that no one's really equipped to answer. But it was my family's, my grandmother's, my father's faith commitments that allowed them to feel like they had something to say. They would turn to scripture. They would turn to the testimony and the witness of Christian faith traditions to try to explain these things. And so,
Without trying to mute the questions and the need in you.
yeah, they wouldn't try to mute them, but they would direct me to narratives through to traditions that they were steeped in that could point me to trying to find these answers. Now, those answers didn't always satisfy my curiosity. They led to more questions, and I am now still, I think, one of the things that I'm thinking about in being true to myself and in being authentic to who I am, which, to be honest, I've never answered any of these questions in the way that you all are asking, but I'm really thinking about truly this as an invitation to unpack my invisible bag. It is to say that it has been the process of trying to understand and answer big questions that have shaped and catalyzed almost every major decision that I've made in terms of responding to things that I felt and couldn't quite understand, and I've turned to spirit and I've turned to art as a way of giving expression to those things, as a way of, it's a container that I'm able to pour my curiosity into, and it helps me to grapple and present to the world my offering, because empathy has helped me to believe that I'm not the only person that's feeling this way. But I feel it almost compulsory to do something about it. And that's shaped fundamentally,
Well, like you touched on, you said in your invisible bag, and by default, my mind automatically went to Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. And the whole premise of the book is my blackness will not let you see me as an individual and my authentic self. And I think that's a good segue to shift gears just a little bit, because you holding such a prestigious title in the most prestigious museum in the Southeast, I think I'm curious how your authenticity has played a role in that. Has it been a benefit or a hindrance?
It's been a benefit to Jamel and just that honey.
It's been a benefit, and it has been a commitment of mine to show up as fully as I can, as myself, as the me that I'm coming to know today.
Isn't that the magic right there?
As the me that has been willing to forgive the me that I was yesterday, and looking back at that person and feeling a little bit of ick and embarrassment. It is in doing that has been my secret to success, and to what has helped me elevate to the positions that I am. I got this position because someone at the highest level of the museum, its executive director, was watching me. And I'm in the position that I'm in at the museum. The position that I hold didn't exist. It's not something I applied for, and it's not a position that there was a job description for, or that was something that this is what museums do. Maybe other ones do. I got this position because I was walking across campus on the Woodruff Art Center, and the executive director of the museum saw me and literally said, essentially, I've been watching you, and I got a question for you. What will it take for you to join us at the museum? I've been, we have a need,
And where were you at this time? Because we can't assume that people know.
I spent I spent 15 years at Emory University. I developed some programs there. I worked in different capacities, directing an ethics in the arts program. I was at the Center for Ethics at Emory University.
You breezing through a lot. We're gonna let you continue.
Jeez Louise, I'm over here
a
like
whole lot,
this
bro.
offers a lot more questions.
Yeah. But that's why I was trying to be like, dang, this is gonna lead to another hole. But that's where I was, full time there, and I was on campus in that Woodruff Art Center campus, where the High Museum is located, with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and the Alliance Theater. I'm walking across the campus, and Rand Suffolk stops me and says what I just said, and wanted me to look at a draft of a document that he was been musing and kind of in thinking about something that the museum needed, and
From a mission impact.
and was like, I've been watching what you've been doing at Emory. I've been watching.
So this is pre-Black Man Smile?
This was during Black Men's Smile.
During Black Man Smile.
And it was basically like, tell us what it'll take to get you to join us here. Now, why is that important? That only emboldened. That only emboldened.
Hold on,
me
time out. Don't ask yourself the question before I could ask the question. You say, why is that important? I'm supposed to ask you why that's important, man. Go ahead.
Well, would you like to ask me why is that important?
Why is that important?
It's important to this question about authenticity because one of the main battles that I fight is a battle with my relationship to fear. I am almost constantly afraid of doing the things that feel big and that I know I'm being called into, and that I know that I'm really the only person that can do. I struggle.
I'm like, your authenticity, you talking about having a seat at the table, it created the table for you.
And I am genuinely, every time, scared out of my mind.
So let me just add some context to this. So I have had the pleasure and the fortune and the blessing of being able to go to Carlton's hometown, Blackshear, Georgia.
That's a huge
Blackshear-
context. That context does not.
Georgia.
Blackshear, Georgia.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Where's Blackshear, Georgia? Really fast.
4 hours south of here, almost right before you hit the Florida line.
Near Valdosta, that area?
Near Valdosta, but even more rural and even about an hour from Valdosta, close to the Okefenokee Swamp.
Gotcha. Okay.
It is a tiny town.
There's one like
Two.
oh,
red
y'all got
lights.
two now.
You don't
Okay.
do that to my man.
I grew up in a town with 5,000 people. That is literally divided by a
my high
railroad.
school.
Divided by a railroad track. Black people live on one side, white people live on the other.
Is it like that till this day?
To this day, humble beginnings. Grew up in a 2-bedroom house with my grandma, grandpa, me, my sister, who until dang near I graduated, I shared a room with. First person in my family to go to college. Raised by a grandmother who made it to the 6th grade. And my environment and my context that I, who am sitting here before you, I'm keenly aware of part of my authentic self has that as my beginnings. And was forged an identity in that context that very few people know and have seen on an intimate level.
Well, Chris, can you provided us the context?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you make the marriage right now?
So growing up in New York, right, gives us the context that the world is big, right? And if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, right? But when you have the context of a two-light town where you go to a stop sign where no one's coming this way and no one is coming that way, but people will still stop for the 10 seconds or the 30 seconds, however long at the stop sign. Like it's super rural and small. And I've been to the community center, and it's a tiny town. And you have that juxtapose of the black side of town and the white side of town. And it's like, it can be a trap in its smallness because you can feel tiny compared to the big world. Going to the prestigious HBCU that you did might have been the pinnacle for some people. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, just seeing where you come from and meeting Grandma Pearl, right, and your dad, it's just like, yes, I'm a testament to the love that you experienced growing up and the circumstances of why that love was so important. Wow. But I can recognize the fear because who's supposed to do that coming from Blackshear, Georgia?
You know what I was thinking about
That's good.
was you've run programs inside the high. You know, Oasis at the High has had sometimes almost just as much people inside the High Art Museum as the town of which you lived in. Literally, 4,000 people inside that space, and just 1,000 shy of programming that you put on for the High. That's remarkable.
I'm not sure if this is the right question, but do you have survivor's remorse in a way? And in context, I mean by survivor's remorse, like being the one that made it. Like at some point, if not already, your face should be somewhere in that town.
Yeah, I think that
We got to make that happen.
I think that I don't know if I would call it survivor's remorse, and I know where you're going with it, as much as it is I never forgot or forget, and I've never been able to disconnect from that reality because my relationship with my family is so strong, and they are all still there. There was no leaving and years later going back and looking at, bruh, every year for every holiday, going home means going to Blackshear. Is seeing the people who, I grew up with, is going to my grandma's kitchen to the same house that I'm telling you that I grew up in, with that tin roof that's rusted, that's Christmas. And my grandmother passed away a few years ago, and
My condolences.
Thank you. And it was a significant moment in my life. And, I would be home in the last years of her life. There were times I'd go home twice in a week, drive there 4 hours and come. So I don't have the luxury of really having the syndrome that you described, because I'm still in so many ways
In it.
Yeah.
inextricably connected to that place. It's a little different now, and I'm going through a moment of identity now, because she's passed away and that home doesn't function the way that it used to.
So it doesn't feel like home almost?
It feels like home, but it is not the place that we gather to do the rituals And ritual, if I may, we're just jumping all over the place, but ritual is core to one's identity. One understands themselves as who they are in part because of the narratives that they tell themselves and the rituals and the symbols that become, that signify, that from which they pull their meaning.
Absolutely.
That's why creating rituals, whether we're conscious of them or not, pouring out a little bit for the homies, dapping each other up, telling each other the stories of our ancestors, the way that we do things like our parents, whether we're conscious of it or not, the way religion is so tied to symbol and ritual is because those people who created those rituals know that that is how a person comes to know and understand who they are.
I remember when you said, like, a lot of times people wrote their I am that was tied to a hardship.
Yeah.
And when I think about the diaspora and the cultures that we all possess, whether it be me, Puerto Rican, African American, we just had a Costa Rican on here. Like, that's how a lot of the rituals were able to survive across that ocean and all of the generations of torment we went through the grandmothers that made sure they passed it down to their daughters
And that's why.
Yeah.
Because they were aware that they had a finite existence. But they were aware that they could live on through the rituals and imparting those things to other people, which is why part of why you have to ask yourself, to be authentically who you are, you have to ask yourself, not who am I solely, you have to ask yourself, how do I know? Because unless you unpack those rituals and those things that went into the formation, the forgery of who you are, and to be able to then decide for yourself, if this is who I want to be. If you don't do that, then you are simply an unconscious product of that forgery, of that forging, that process. I think that to stand up as your authentic self is to unpack, why do I think that as a woman I'm supposed to blah, blah, blah? It's who I am.
Right.
It's how I act.
But it's the why.
But it's who I am really just the things that I do? It is until you begin to unpack, why do I do that? When you stop and then you start thinking, well, I do this just because my mom used to do it all the time. But do I really, is that how I want to show up in my, and when you ask, I am how do I know? If you stop and say, well, it's because of what I do. Well, why do you do that? Well, it's because of what my mom used to do.
Now
Wait
you're
a minute.
operating in the
Right.
higher
Wait a minute.
consciousness.
And that's not necessary. So now this is not necessarily me.
This isn't necessarily me. This is the practice and the
amalgamation
conditioning.
of-
This is the
100%.
conditioning. This is a set of behaviors that I've been conditioned. But who I really am has always struggled with this.
I'm confused on who I'm going to be tomorrow now.
So when you take the time to do that assessment and understand, how do I know this is who I am? And begin to make an assessment and try to come to a critical conclusion or make a conscious decision, a conscious and a conscientious decision about, is this who I want to be? And is this now why I've always had a struggle with showing up in this way? Then you can begin to be your authentic self. Because you can become more and closely aligned with that who you really are, or that who you've always been longing to be.
Through the questions, through asking the proper questions to yourself.
You have to, and sometimes it's through therapy, sometimes it's through meeting someone who challenges you through their being fully who they are. They make you ask yourself, am I being fully who I am supposed to be?
Talk to him.
I agree.
Here's what I want to do. Because I've seen some people that put me on this path. When a person walks into a room and they've done this work and they know who they are and they're operating from that perspective, you know it, and it make you want some of that. boy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It make you want some of that right there. I want some of that. It makes you want some of that. So them embodying that kind of practice and that kind of liberation, because ultimately that's just a form of liberation. When they embody that and they show you, it invites you to catch courage.
It gives you
like
permission.
People it's like that odor. You smell it, you're like, oh my God, I want some of that. I want some of that for me.
That's good.
And what I want to do is being in the business of showing up so authentically me that has gone through this process that I watch people accept for themselves the invitation to be more of who they are. I want to hear. I want to walk in a room, and whenever I leave, I start hearing the clinging sounds of chains because people are breaking free from the shackles that they've had themselves in.
Damn, bro.
And when I hear that, because some people have done that for me, it's made me want some of that. And then it's like, wow, I can actually be weird. I can actually, because that person, we know those people. You know them people. And it makes you want to do that too. And I battle with fear, but that's not who I am. I've determined that I am courageous. Fear is just an emotion that I don't know what it is, that I constantly have to work through. But it has only been recently that I've been able to accept and know who I am. I'm courageous as hell. Look at all the stuff I've done. But I used to be like, why am I always, what? I have physical responses to the fear that I battle with. Like I am a shaker. I will literally like a leaf, and I used to think that was who I was. No, that was an emotion that I experienced.
You thought that equated to
But
cowardice.
who I am, bro, I'm a brave motherfucker, man.
Yeah.
And I tell
And
myself,
fear is the gatekeeper to bravery.
Indeed. Getting on the other side of that.
Yeah. There's
That's
no
who
way
I
to
am.
be brave unless you walk through that path. You know, I thought about when was the last time I felt my most authentic self as I turned 44? And I realized it was 14. That was before I started cosplaying and putting on I gotta be a thug. I gotta be a pretty, whatever it was that I had to put on, the mask I had to put on, it was the change that you heard clink. And when I turned 42, you said this earlier, that when you thought of authenticity, you thought about a certificate of authenticity. Mm-hmm. And I know that because my wife's an artist. Mm-hmm. And at 42 was the first time I wrote a poem, because I write one every year around my birthday. It's called my period piece. That was the first time that I stopped writing about the mud. I stopped writing about the struggle, from the Bronx and the shit, all
that's
Oh,
of those.
part of how you identify.
Provided, yes. However, that's no longer how I'm showing up.
Right.
I'm not putting that on a pedestal to show the world to justify my existence and why I'm currently here. So at the end of the poem, I said, you could consider this a mural of root. I brought closure to every issue that plagued my youth. Now I find it priceless at 42. I could flaunt my font that allows me to sign every portrait in truth. That right there, when I put that period on that one right there, I haven't written another pity piece again.
Yeah, I think I want to go back to what came up, Carlton, when you talked about the relationship with fear. That I think is just paramount, right?
I had to get there.
Yeah, I get it. And so there's a redefining, and I love how you talked about the liberation, because there's clearly a psychological liberation when you confront fear without being confrontational. And so you get to redefine what fear means for you, right? Fear is not confirmation. Fear is information.
Repeat that one more time.
Fear
Yeah,
is not
rewind.
confirmation. Fear is information. Right? It's fear is information. And you get to define what that means for you. Most of us experience the feelings that come with fear, and we think it's confirming something, right? I teach this all the time with men. Slide across worry, concern, and then fear. I ask you, are you afraid? Well, no, I'm just a little worried. Okay, we good. Are you concerned? Yeah. Okay, good. But they go-to is fear. That's their go-to. And so we have to give them permission to set up new boundaries with the relationship with fear.
Do you think oftentimes that's based off of just a lot of our upbringing?
It is.
I think
I
it's
mean,
tied to like masculinity and what they define it.
it's tied to some form or avenue of control, mostly self-imposed, right? And the world does that. Most of us help the world out. They do a good job of trying to smother you.
And then
you
we
ain't
just
got to
double
help
down
them
on
out.
it. Right, we smother ourselves.
So I want to just touch on the relationship with fear. Fear's information. It has more to do with you just having a standard and your moral code than you feeling inadequate if you stay present to it.
That's deep.
And if you, because of the coding of masculinity, my struggle was, because I'm experiencing fear, it meant that I didn't see it as separate as information. I let it confirm a part of my identity.
Right.
The fact that I was experiencing fear caused me to confirm in my mind that I was a scary cat.
Correct.
And scary cats, that's not a way of showing up in the world. That's not the masculine. That's not being a man.
Damn, you took me down. Damn.
But you did it good, though. You used the word struggle 5 times. We often do that, right? Just because it's a challenge don't mean it's a struggle. You get to redefine what it is. You can't claim being struggle to fear or fear being a struggle on the end of having data to suggest how brave and courage you are. Period. Fear is information. It don't even line up for most brothers. It just sound dope.
And now I'm able to make it the information. It is what I'm experiencing, and I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
But I am careful with the I am statements. But I am not a scary cat.
Right.
I am brave, but I struggle with, and I've learned to be conscious of my relationship. That's how I started my relationship to fear. And talking about a word that you all used earlier about vulnerability, the vulnerability that allows me to be able to experience intimacy with people who I decide to share that space with. And intimacy is really about exposing yourself, allowing someone to see the things that they could use to hurt you, but inviting them into a process of using those things to heal you.
This is good.
And in my vulnerable moments, I'm able to share and be transparent about my relationship to fear. Because by embodying a practice of bravery, I know that it is helping them to do the same thing. So my conscious decision in how I show up is to try to show up as my best self, because I know that people are watching. And I know that now more than ever because of things like, back to the story I told you earlier. Someone was just watching me move through the world and was like, in watching you, what I see is what I want to take a risk on. And in watching me and me being my authentic self has opened doors that I didn't even know existed. Probably that people didn't even know existed. We talk about favor, back to tying it again to spiritual concepts. Sometimes I think it's just real life stuff that's connected to spiritual concepts. That favor is the unmerited result of a door opening, because really you just were doing the work.
Yeah. It's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct of it. And so, yeah, telling your story and showing up as yourself and being willing to see and affirm in others when you see them doing the same. It helps them have it supercharges them. Bruh, why I spent the time in that hallway just pouring into you is because I see you doing the courageous thing. And I want to affirm those things because I know it's going to make you want to do them more. It's going to make you want to go further. It's going to supercharge you because I know what that has done for me.
Damn, you got me tearing up here, bro.
So I make it a point, because words of affirmation are super important to me, so much so that I've had to learn that I became too dependent on them, that if I didn't have them, that it made it seem like the thing that I was doing wasn't valued or validated or valuable. So now I had to realize that it's valuable, but you just might not get the people to acknowledge it or affirm it.
Yeah.
But because I need him so much, I freely give. When I see Chris, I speak into you because I see you, bro.
Yeah.
I see you. Mario, I see you. And sometimes, I talk about the best advice that you can give someone else are the words you need to hear yourself.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I gotta tell us a quick story about this brother. You talk about authenticity, and yes, words are extremely important, but sometimes it's an action. And I went to an Undugu meeting. I haven't seen Carlton probably almost a year at that point. And for whatever reason, I don't even remember the reason, but I was wound up really tight. If Undugu wasn't that Tuesday, it was a good chance that I was going to explode on somebody somewhere. And I knew it couldn't be home, so I was probably, could have went left. And I'm sitting at the bar at the bookstore gallery, shout out to Kyle and all of them, and brother Carlton walks in, and he smiles at me. First he smiles, which I was like, oh, what up? What up, bro? And I don't know if I definitely didn't smile as big as him. It was a smirk. And then he gave me a hug, bro. And I don't know if you know this, but like I felt I actually felt a decompression in me. Like if it was like air, it was like, and he wouldn't let me go. He held me there for a second. And I walked away and I was like, damn, I didn't realize I needed that hug from this brother that much.
Yeah.
And I was light as a feather afterwards.
He was feathery.
I was feathered.
But that makes sense because what it sounds like is you were heavy in your head, and he reminds you to drop in your body.
Right.
Yeah.
This conversation, we've talked a lot about being authentic. Carlton, as a man that is running a huge program within High Art Museum, a man that's been on Emory's campus, have there been moments where you felt that you had to mask who you really are as an adult? And if so, what's that process like?
I think it's expressed itself more as, are there times when I know that telling the truth is going to cost me something? And authenticity then for me isn't about how I show up. It's about closing my eyes and doing the mental calculation and saying that what I have to lose is not nearly as valuable as that I already possess in being exactly who I am and doing exactly what I know I have to do. And in many cases, that has been in those spaces, taking a deep breath, shaking. This is something I do. It's a weird thing. And telling the truth. Or making a decision to not go along with something that I just knew that wasn't right. And in these examples, to not be totally vague, but they mostly deal with issues around microaggressions or race or decisions that corporate or large entities make to try to tell a truth in a certain way that protects their identity and that doesn't expose them or doesn't side with the student in a case where a professor might have done something or just, you were talking about, we haven't talked about, but I'll bring into the room. A major decision that I made recently was to make a public statement about joining a boycott and not supporting Target. I made that decision, and it required me to be authentic and to calculate what the cost
Let's be
In
clear.
the
Your
context,
brand, right?
yeah.
Let's be clear.
The
Your brand.
context to the audience.
So in 2024, this passion project that you mentioned, Black Men Smile, turned 10 years old.
That's not a project. That's a mission.
The mission, the movement of Black Men Smile, turned 10 years old, and we celebrated as God would have it by having Target, the national corporation, reach out to us and invite us and choose us to be one of 4 brands that would be part of its Black History Month collection in Target. What that meant in essence was we would be in 1,900 Target stores. I designed and they produced a 10-piece collection of Black Men Smile products. We were in every store that exists. And it was to date the biggest thing we've ever done, the most lucrative deal, the biggest exposure. And that the following year, this year, Black Men Smile, Target rolled back its DEI initiatives, and we were no longer. And we made a public statement, though we had a good relationship with the brand and though we had an opportunity to continue a business relationship, we made a public statement that we would no longer support the brand, that we were joining a national boycott, and that we would stand in solidarity with the Black leaders who were calling for that. And I knew that that is where I stood, I knew that that is where I stand, and I knew that it would cost me. But it would be inauthentic to myself and to what we represent in the movement, just as it would in many instances at Emory and as it would be at High, to not do the right thing. And for me, that was the most authentic thing that I could do.
How did that make you feel afterwards?
In this particular case, because of that statement, because of me doing that, it did the same thing that whenever I walk in my authentic self, and why I invite other people to do it is because, one, it allowed me to be able to live with myself and feel that my integrity wasn't compromised, that who I am, that my grandma raised, that this dude from Blackshear, that this person that was raised in love and in principle, that I could look myself in the mirror. And then what it did, which is the universe just showing out, is that it has presented opportunities that I didn't even know existed. Reverend Jamal Bryant of New Birth was the person who made that call for the national boycott. A week after we went to, press reached out to us about telling the story of, hey, Black Men Smile, you were in Target, what are you gonna do? What about your stuff that's in stores? We made our statement, we weren't supporting, we were boycotting. Jamal Bryant invited us, heard the news story, invited us to New Birth, and from the pulpit told the story of this brand. Wow. And I am in the middle of experiencing a moment in the brand and the support that is so much that I'll just say we are at an unprecedented awareness, financial viability, and level of support that isn't even matched by the exposure from Target. And we're doing it.
I want everybody to remember this, just in case your order comes a little late. that brother is that
enough,
is a
yeah.
tidal
By the
wave
way,
of
this
blessing.
is
And
this
we're
is
doing it
a
all,
part of the new collection. We know what we
nice.
got.
Yes, we do. That's
and
a
we're
fact.
doing it all independently, which presents opportunities and challenges. But I've never seen anything like this. We just, NBC News just did a national story. AJC, WSB TV.
Ooh, give me another one.
And I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything like this.
Well,
good. That's so
deserved.
good.
So proud of you, bro.
Well,
So proud of you,
fucking
man.
deserved, bro.
Yeah.
There's not a part of me that has seen anything less than your absolute best every time I've seen you. I can't think of somebody in a mission that's more deserving. I think about my son and him wearing the black man smile when he was 10, 8, before we even got the pleasure of breaking bread, and what that meant and how he wore that with pride and honor. You know, right. I think it was right around the hills when you did the when H&M did the joint and you came out with the king. Like, from my perspective, to be sitting here with brothers that I've admired from afar and respected from afar, and have emboldened the pride and dignity of my own son. When I think about the blessings y'all are currently going through, well fucking deserved.
Thank you. I got a quick authenticity story about Brother Carlton.
Let's
over
get
here.
it.
So again,
Here we go. Hold on.
You got a lot. I don't know which one you're about to tell, but
One day we was at Blue Flame.
I'm already laughing.
No, this isn't necessarily a funny one, but it's a good one. So, being from New York, our salutations are very generalized. All right, bro, holla at you later. Holla at you later in the New York context might mean I'll probably run into you again, you know, on the train, or I see you on the block back in the hood,
All
wherever.
right, yo, get at me.
Yeah, but I'm very loose with I'll holla at you later.
Tell it right.
Carlton, over time.
Carlton, you've had your time.
Over
Let
time.
Prince get his off. Carlton done interviewed his own self the whole goddamn episode.
Over time, I kept saying that, apparently. I'm going to holler at you later. Carlton pulled me to the side one day. No, he called me, matter of fact. He called me out on this. And he was like, bro, when you say you're going to hit me later, I'm assuming that you're going to text me or call me. And so there's some anticipation of communication. Or I might put something to the side because we were starting to do business together and everything. And he said, you know, part of my boundaries, part of my personal boundaries is that I'm impeccable with my word, or I'm aiming to be impeccable with my word, including my time. So if you ain't gonna hit me later, don't say that. You understand what I'm saying? And it was something that was so simple. It was something that was so simple, but it made me have a ton of respect for two things: how he carried himself and what he thought of my friendship. That apparently these were boundaries that he has set for people who he considers close. And so by sharing that with me, it gave me a choice of, this was an extension to be intimate. This was an extension to be my brother. If you're gonna be my friend, then this is what I require.
Right.
That's good.
And this is what my word means to me. So I'm expecting your word to mean something to you. And what that did was, it was the first time I've ever been challenged by another man about our communication, right? Honestly, that was something that I've experienced from a woman, but what that really was intimacy.
That's exactly what it was.
Right? Which goes back to our conversation of understanding that intimacy does not have anything to do specifically and automatically with the opposite sex. So once I was able to realize that, it was just like, I think I just got invited to be somebody's best friend. You know what I'm saying? And it changed the dynamic of who he saw me as and how I saw our connection, to the point that our children call each other uncle, which, you know, coming from where we come from, how vastly different it is. Now that I've seen where he's from, I understand that that uncle is very powerful.
That means something, right?
You're
right.
supposed to show up.
Yeah, there's nobody else to fill that void. Your uncle.
Yeah, this ain't unk. This is
Yeah,
uncle.
it's not generic. So I just want to say thank you for challenging me in that way, challenging my authenticity, but also knowing your own and feeling comfortable to say, these are my boundaries. I want to fuck with you, but this is what I require. And it's allowed me to kind of challenge myself and look at myself and how I show up for people especially my wife and children. So I just want to say thank you. For
Look at
seeing
that
me.
authentic moment. Clap that up right there.
He wouldn't say, "I'll see you later." He'll say, "I'm gonna call you tomorrow at 5."
Right. He done took it way over the top. Huh?
All right, so Bloom, we on to the next segment of Brother with Feelings. If you look to your right, Mr. Carlton,
Okay.
you'll see cards.
Okay.
All of these cards represent
He got it.
somebody. It could be a guest, Jamel, Chris, or myself. And you got to play one of these cards. So who was the brother with feelings today? You know, this is a hard one for me because I saw Jamel get tearied up over there, and even your impassioned story, even my impassioned story about Carlton. But hearing the way Carlton articulated himself, boy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, brother with feelings.
You know,
Are you going with Jamel?
and I'm going against the grain. I'm going with Mario because there were several times that Mario's eyes were a little glossy. Now, I don't think I saw a tear to drop. This is my first time. This is the first time, bro. Like, you kind of swelled up a little bit. So I'm rocking
I
with
was
Mario
coughing.
on that.
I was coughing.
Whatever. Whatever, yo.
All right, so boom.
What's
This
the tally again?
2 G's, 1 M, and 1 J. So that means you, sir, have joined an illustrious fraternity of brothers that are known as Brothers with Feelings.
Brothers with feelings.
So to celebrate that, you get a cool sticker. You can put that right on that nice black and white joint. So instead of BMF, it's BWF. You a brother with feelings. You know what I'm
Sure, it's
saying?
on the heart, bro. We got to keep it on the heart, good brother.
Nah, he's saying his heart that big.
It's hard in the middle.
You know what I mean? His heart go like that.
People to see it. Yeah.
The lungs is in the back. You know what I mean? And actually, as the brother with feelings, you get up to 2 minutes to address and articulate any thought or story you had about authenticity. And it may be a good time to get your boy back with another story on him now. You know what I'm saying?
He ain't asked for all that. He ain't say nothing about that.
I'll just be more generic and just say that to the audience, if I could talk to
That's your camera right there.
you are enough. You are enough just as you are, and the world seeks to, with many of our identities, stifle, seeks to hold us down and make us think that we're not even worthy of pursuing our best self, that where we are, what the world has to say about us is who we are. And I just want to say that that you are enough just as who you are, that your gifts will make room for you, that you have permission to be who you are, and that, in fact, that is what the world is waiting for. Mm-hmm. That by you, even with fear, knowing that who you are and that what you can work toward is being brave, that you give other people permission to do the same. And I promise you, the world is looking for examples like you, so that people feel like they have the permission to be who they are.
Strong, bro.
Strong.
Yeah. Strong. Pin that one up there. That was a wonderful closer. Good job, Mr. No follow-up questions on that one?
No,
That's how good it was? You know it's real when Jamel ain't got no follow-up questions.
That was good.
Well, we are on to our final segment, which is, what you trying to acknowledge? And with that, we always...
That's the name of the segment?
Okay.
Okay.
I wasn't asking.
I was like,
yo, what?
Did I not
the
drop
energy
enough
just
right
changed. No, we deferred to our big brother, Dr. Kurt, to give us synopsis or give us some insight or practical applications that we could use on wanting and how to be authentic. Sir.
Well, this is actually good and very easy for me because it came out of the quality of the conversation with the esteemed brother guest, Carlton. So you made it really, really easy. And so with your permission and on behalf of just the audience, I want to recap some of the things that you drove home very well. The quality of your life is predicated on the quality of the questions, right? Not that you're posed. More importantly, the ones that you pose to yourself. And it's your willingness, your self-awareness, and your wherewithal to answer them that's critical, right? And so I think, we should hold on to that. I don't think.
I'm gonna hold on to that with 2 hands.
No,
That's tight.
we need to hold that on. Big questions are life's requirements, and big answers are life's necessities.
Can you repeat that?
Jamel always asks me.
Make sure-
That's why
Not so much
I
for
write
me.
shit down
Not
for
so much
Jamel.
for me.
Right?
I
Yeah.
just don't want a brother have to
I know, I'm just
rewind it
messing
10
with you.
seconds. Right.
I started writing down because I know Jamel gonna be like, say that again, and I'm like, what did I say? Right. Big questions are life's requirements, and big answers are life's necessities, and it's the gift to oneself to continue to live in that perpetual state of answering questions and answering them. And that's the gift that keeps on giving, and that's what we're doing, man. So love this discussion about authenticity. You brought it home on so many different levels. I could have picked all y'all for brothers with feelings, right? Because he expressed his since the clock shot, right? I should have demanded that you, Chris, and Mario and Jamel jumped on top of that. But real good, real good. It's the questions and the answers that I'm gonna leave us with.
Okay. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to clap it up for our brother
Yes,
Carlton
sir.
Mackey one time. My brother with feelings.
Real good, real good, real
And
good.
as always, no matter where you're playing it or what storm you're going through, there's always room to grow. Aight, so bloom.
Yes, sir.
So bloom. Good segment.
real good job.
Good segment.
Real good job.